Jim, can you quickly call some of the staff to come on so we can set the
we do have some on right now. I don't want to take any more people away from work.
We can't count.
What's that, Jim?
Kids, we can't count them.
Yeah. But
got a quick
it's a good
agenda.
sign. It's a good sign, Andrew, starting off the year with a good number, and hopefully we can get to 38 today.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. It'd be awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Happy New Year. It's awesome to see everybody again. I've got a quick agenda up here. We're gonna let Jim kick things off for 2023, and then we have a Respond V2 release. So I'll kick that over to Leron and Chip, and then I got a little thing for enablement that Michelle and I are going to walk you guys through, and love your feedback on account compromise. Okay, so let me stop sharing, and Jim, kick it back to you.
Great, thank you, Andrew. So for those that are on this call and have been faithful to this call, thank you. We started this in September. And it's one of the, we did a lot of great things, I think, as an organization in 2022, and this is definitely one of them. And we want to build on it in 2023. The biggest thing I want to say to this group right now is thank you. Thank you for helping us build something for the MSP community, for you. We see it every single day in our numbers. Andrew and I, we spoke last night about a bunch of stuff. And one of the things he asked was, since the SASE MSP call, have you start seeing like more and more adoption within the base? And the answer is yes. And I can tell you, and we have a great team here on the account management side, and, Ryan, manages that partner success team. This time last year, we had 5 partners that had over 1,000 users on the platform. Today, we sit here in 2023 on the first SASE MSP call. I can tell you we have 56.
Wow.
We have 56 MSPs with over 1,000 users on this platform. And one of our partners has 109,000 users on it. So we've built it for scale, so we know we can handle, that many users. But this doesn't happen without dedicated MSPs, like Ben Jones and Gary and Andy and, a host of folks that have been with us from the beginning, that have been tremendous advocates for SaaS alerts and what we've done, and been extremely helpful in terms of, guiding our vision. And I'm just so excited and humbled to be, CEO of SaaS alerts, and really excited about what 2023 is going to bring for all of us. So thank you all very much.
Awesome, Jim. And we hit a new record. We're at 38.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Awesome. All right. So welcome. If you have never been with us before, there's got to be some that have not. This is the SASE MSP call. This is something inspired by Jim and the SaaS Alerts team. My name is Andrew Morgan. If you haven't been on anything that I've done before, like the cyber call, I'm here to help facilitate this. And we're going to kick it over now to Leron and Chip for the new Respond version 2.0 release.
So before they go, Andrew, I just want to correct you about something.
Oh.
I didn't inspire this. You inspired the SASE MSP call. We were talking, you said, look, we've done this before. I've done this before, facilitated other communities. I think you guys have a great product. I think it'd be great for you guys. So it was your idea. Thank you. And I know we're going to make it bigger and better in 2023.
Thanks, Jim. All right. I appreciate that. Chip, Leron, you guys there? I know.
I'm definitely here. I'm hoping Leron is here so he can share screen and take us through Respond. V2. I'll provide some background maybe while he's prepping for everybody. So many weeks passed, probably one of the first 3 SASE calls that we had, we got very direct feedback from our partners on module, and the number of people who were using it was fairly small at that point. And people immediately said, look, this is great, but we really would love to have the ability to create events that are based upon, not instead of an event that's predefined or a group of events, but on attributes around a specific account behavior. Things like when an account was last logged in or signed in. The specific use case that was laid out was people wanted to be able to set up an alert that would inform them proactively, so they didn't even have to run a report if old accounts weren't used for, let's say, 60 days. And then take it one step further and automatically block sign in on those accounts, or even delete those accounts if they chose to. So that is Respond V2. It was released just before the holiday break. Well, no, right in the middle of the holiday break. Sorry, between Christmas and New Year's. It's still in beta, but it's functional, and we're still looking for more feedback on it. So, with that, Liron, are you with us? And can you share a screen and take everybody through?
Sure. You kind of stole my intro there, but I'll add a little bit of color to what Chip mentioned as far as the genesis of this. And if I recall, it's definitely been Respond, but when we showed account management, which is the tool that is used to clean up, to do the initial guest account cleanup, if you will, on this call, we started getting asked to, hey, great, but do I have to repeat this like one-time cleanup over and over again? Wouldn't it be nice if I could just automatically clean up guest accounts on an ongoing basis? And so we just kind of, given that feedback, we took that and we expanded on it. So we have a pending release. This is our QA environment, and I've shown you this because what I'm going to show you in production what this looks like. But as soon as we release this, it's going to look very slightly different. And the simple change is when a rule is with accounts, it will have this kind of tag like this on it. And the events rule will simply look like this. So we expect to release this today. But in production right now, you can see we only have the event tag. So the first thing that you'll see is if you head over to rule templates, right now in production, it looks like this. But again, later today, it'll have that nice blue event tag over it. We have 2 templates, stale account cleanup and stale guest account cleanup. So let's take a look at what this does. So looking at this, when an account matches the following conditions for Microsoft, last sign in is greater than 90 days, login status is equal to login permitted, and type is equal to guest. Okay, then what do? Block sign in and expire all logins. Okay, this looks good to me. I want to use it. I'm going to click the duplicate button from the templates. I'm going to go to create. It's going to take me right into the rule. And I will rename this like this. And I can just walk through, right? You'll notice at the top of the page, we now have this target option. If you want to create one of these from scratch, events is the Respond that we know today. And if you want to have rules based on accounts, you would select accounts here. So because this is a template, this is basically done for me, except for we're not going to make assumptions about who you're going to do this for. So you can do all organizations just like you can with Respond, or you can select specific organizations that you want to enable this for. And then similarly, just like Respond, you can also select which accounts you want this for. So let's say this is for everyone, for this organization. And in the conditions here, that's when things really become different, because rather than looking at events such as sign in outside approved location, we're looking at account status. So in this case, last sign in is greater than 90 days. Login status is equal to login permitted. And account type is equal to guest. Now you may be asking, obviously it's login permitted, but we had an interesting product type conversation around this. Hello, Paul. We had an interesting conversation around this because we actually have to filter. We can't just do a select all, because if we try to block sign in on all accounts, that includes accounts that have login blocked already. And so we just wanted to expose that in the front end so you could see it, that we are in fact filtering for only login permitted, and the type is equal to guest. And that's really it, right? Summary kind of tells me what we're doing here. And then the response actions are very similar to what you have in standard response. So block sign in and expire all logins, approve automatically, approve manually. I can then do the exact same thing I could before. I can select the severity, determine who the alert goes to. I can configure an SMS number if I want to know when this happens. But since to me, this is kind of an active cleanup situation, I don't want to get text messages for this. And I also think that this is a medium. And when this starts off, if I was an MSP, I would want to approve these manually until I get confidence in the system. Then once I saw that it's doing what I wanted to, and I have confidence in it, I would approve it automatically. And I'm just going to update the draft rule. And just like that, I have my rule set up. And again, once we release the new code, it'll have this nice prettier tag, so you can more easily distinguish between accounts and events. And that's how you, on an ongoing basis, would block sign in for guest accounts, depending on whatever you decide, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, guest accounts, all accounts. It's really up to you. You have the flexibility to do and protect your customers as you see fit.
So Leron, I'm just curious, and forgive the naive question, but can respond be used for things like, hey, a forwarding rule got set up and, you want to, immediately turn that off? Like, can that kind of SOAR-esque stuff be put in place, or will that eventually be there?
Yeah, so that's the sort of feedback that we're looking for on Respond, in terms of what do we do for events beyond block sign in, for instance. So
Right.
for that one, we would have to basically have a unique type of rule that says when a forwarding rule gets created, then you have some special actions that correspond to that forwarding rule.
Well, we do already have that capability, Leron. In Respond v1, you can select forwarding rule enabled as the trigger and take an action to block account sign-ins or expire all existing logins. Like, if you believe that especially in combination with some other event, is an indication of a compromise, that's been available since Respond v1 came out to begin with.
Yes,
That's in the templates already, and we often suggest, maybe setting up that rule to run outside of business hours. Maybe only care about locking accounts when somebody sets up email forwarding between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. or something.
Yeah, but there are instances where you want a forwarding rule and you don't always want it to blindly turn them all off.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely, Gary. Absolutely. But in combination of hypothetically a geolocation, multiple failed in attempts, and this one,
That all makes sense.
and this one gets through, and then a mail and a forwarding rule gets created, and who knows, some change in security setting. Is it possible to kind of just share how that looks? And Andy, go ahead. Sorry, Andy, you're on mute. Your hand's not on mute.
Yeah, two questions, and that is, one, can we set up a process where these Respond templates, procedures, however you're going to call them, go through an approval process internally. In other words, the person that scribes it doesn't necessarily have the ability to turn it on and access it until a second person validates it. The second request builds on that one. Can we have a sandbox that we could test against to see the results of this so that we could say, hey, you know what, it tests clean and we're good to go?
Sort of, and I say sort of because we don't have that specific workflow, but you can accomplish what you're asking about by doing a manual approval. If you do manual approval, nothing like these actions are not going to take place unless somebody goes in and clicks a button to do it. So if you wanted to test this, if I was an MSP, what I'd do is I'd turn this on for my own company, and hopefully you have some old guest accounts, or you could even turn it on for all accounts that are older than a day, whose sign in is older than a day, and then do it to approve manually. And then you could see that it's asking you, hey, you have this rule set up. Do you want to execute these actions? And then you could just kind of ignore it.
Where do those approvals show up? Like if you have a pending approval, where does that go?
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
It generates an alert, right? So I set up a medium alert here.
Mhm.
It would generate an alert that would appear in medium. And then it would tell me, hey, one of your custom rules, one of your respond rules fired. Click this link and do something with it.
But Gary, is your end question, does it end up in ConnectWise or Manage?
Just where do we go to see those queued up requests?
So
Like in ThreatLocker, they have a screen for all that stuff.
you would see it under medium
Okay.
alerts if you configured it as medium, and critical if you configured it as critical. And to answer Andrew's question, it would go to the PSA if you have PSA configured and you're pushing mediums and or criticals to your PSA.
And it also goes to SMS if you configure SMS alerting along with this respond rule. So you've got lots of options for how that rule can get configured. And we do recommend to partners that the best way to test out a new rule without impacting anybody else operationally. And I'm really thinking of some of our larger partners who have, on the one hand, people who are running their SOC and using SaaS alerts as part of it. And on the other hand, a frontline support group. They don't want to bother the frontline support group with testing that they're doing, winding up in the PSA. So they build a respond rule. They use SMS alerting, but they keep the severity to low. That way it doesn't hit the PSA because it's a ticket. They get an alert on it and they can track it through the user interface by going to the real-time alert section and selecting low, and they'll see it represented there with all of its information, including the link to approve, disapprove, whatever else.
A follow-on question is it possible to have a debug alert category that we could say, hey, these templates, while we're evaluating them, can they go to a fifth category other than critical, medium, low, or suppressed? And two, could we move that the enable automatically to run be moved to a manager or administrator of SaaS alerts versus a team member?
Well, you have to be an admin of SaaS alerts to even enter into the respond module, Andy.
Yep. And where I'm going with this is people make mistakes. They get distracted for a moment. And I'm really just trying to add a second step validation and then to be able to run this against a data set and validate specifically these functions. So that's, if we had it have a different hue, different color, it's coming in. I don't know if these are options. I just thought I would ask that clearly.
Yeah, I mean, today the option is to set the rule that you've created in draft mode. We don't have a specific approval workflow built into it. That would kind of be an operational principle that would be enforced internally. But remember, a team level SaaS alerts user can't even access respond to create a rule. They don't even have that permission to do so. It's got to be an admin.
Oops. Yeah, no, I'm just coming at it from the CASEA perspective. We have agent procedures created and approved before we implement, and that was just because they can be very powerful. And I perceive that we're moving that route here, and this is wonderful. I mean, the fact that we could do this with Microsoft 365 is very awesome.
So the only ad that I think you'd be looking for is one admin would create the rule. He would put it in draft mode, and there would be a requirement for a second admin to review the rule, evaluate the rule, and then sign off on it. And then obviously we would record that sign off as another element in SaaS alerts logging, so that we know, number one, who the admin was that created the rule, and then who the reviewer was that finally approved it. That's what you're looking for.
And or what if someone executes a template in error and it affects all of my customers at the same time, and I need to undo that rule very quickly? Give me the ability to reverse it rapidly. That would be a second way to do it, because mistakes are going to happen. I know that.
Yeah, so that's already there. I mean, if someone implements a template, and let's say it's one that all of a sudden generates 1,000 tickets, all of the same type across your whole customer base, you see it. It's another logged event when your
Right.
admin creates a new rule that's already presented in SaaS alerts. And two, you can come back in to respond and turn off a rule instantly, just in 1 second.
Yeah, but Chip, I don't think I think what he's saying is not just turning it off, but like if your rule is to disable accounts, for example,
Yeah.
can you
We have to undo it.
reverse the actions that were just taken?
So I'm looking at this particular rule and saying, hey, look, they ran this and they messed up and they selected every account, not just guest accounts. How do I reverse this rapidly?
And when you say this, you mean, let's say
This
that
particular procedure,
they
SASE call.
enable this rule, and it triggers the blocking of everyone's account.
Right.
And you want,
And I need to
Okay.
undo it. That's
You want-
what you're hearing.
Right, it's not just undoing it, it's reversing it, and,
Yeah, exactly.
or unplaying it, if you will.
Control Z.
yeah.
Excellent way to put it.
Is there maybe a threshold, Chip, that could be put in place? Like, you can only do this, one time for an account, but then upon an approval, you can increase that threshold. Just trying to maybe some
Yeah.
throttles in place.
Yeah, there is. I mean, so that's what the manual approval step is all about. Leron, if you can go to that. So when we're in alert configuration, we provide both manual approval and automatic approval. Manual approval is going to require somebody for each individual alert to select the link that shows them, Andrew Morgan's account was just logged in from Germany and he set up a forwarding address. Let's stick with that theme for a couple of minutes. The action for this rule is to block his account and expire all current logins. Do you approve? Yes or no? So you would have to either approve or reject that for every single one of those So that's the stopgap, right? That's the threshold part. And to be honest, this is going to be a long explanation, so everybody just buckle in. We had this discussion when we were creating Respond, and we had feedback from the partner group that we were working with on the very early versions and mock-ups of this, that they wanted this notion of automatic approval. And I did not foresee what Andy is asking for, but I did foresee that automatic approval could be a massive problem. And I stressed a lot, guys, I don't really think we want that. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Okay. So we put it in. I'll tell you, every time I talk to a partner and do a demo of this, I tell them, I would never set anything to automatic approval. Like there's no way I would trust system. I don't trust Microsoft's automated systems or Google's or anybody else's to take a dramatic action on an account without one of my team members reviewing it.
Can I make a request?
So I can't claim I was thinking first of where Andy was going to go with this, but that's what I would do with it today. The idea of a replay, It's an interesting idea. I'll tell you, it's a pretty big coding exercise because we would need to build a whole new set of storage tables around all of the actions that have previously been taken on an account in a domain, and then be able to reverse them. So there's a lot of data handling and there's a lot of logic that would have to go into that. Like, it's definitely not something that we could just say, yeah, we could do that in a month. Like, we'd have to really think through how we would approach that. So, and sorry, Ryan, I stepped all over you.
No, I was just what I would say is, you know, there's a note under that section that says manual approval will auto expire. Maybe set another note saying automatic approval should be used in these circumstances, or some kind of warning
Yeah,
or
with
caveat,
extreme caution.
right? Or make it so that in order to check that box, there needs to be an approval process, right? Because that's the scary part, is turning that on by accident, right? So it's like, if you default to manual and then have a control process around turning automatic on, that I think that would, for me,
Well, but-
that's my biggest stumbling block with Respond, and why I haven't started using it yet, is because ultimately I wanted to get to the automatic approval, but the barrier of trying to get us there is pretty significant, of having to put in a lot of processes and procedures to deal with the risk ramifications of that we're only going to do manual for everything, and I have to restrict anyone from access to the portal that essentially that isn't me, so that I can trust that that doesn't get turned on.
Yeah, but so I think part of it though is I don't mind the automatic if you're disabling an account or two, or a percentage threshold. I think, and I'll put words in Andy's mouth, for example, which is, you know, we've coded something that tested okay, but 30 days from now, there's a mistake in it, or the logic is flawed in the sense that it's about to disable 95% of the people in an organization. And that's where I think you want some stopgap logic that says, you know, if we're over a particular threshold, even in automatic mode, we want to pause and say, did you really mean to do this? You know, if we can't undo it easily, maybe we should have some prevention in place to say, this doesn't look right, because we're about to disable almost everybody in the account.
I mean, for me, you know, the risk is not necessarily in that it's just, you know, most of the time we're blocking sign-in, so it's a non-destructive event. It's not like it's unrecoverable, right? But the thing that I'm trying to account for is a huge increase in support-related requests, right? Of having an influx on the service side of a engineer or a technician on the SOC side saying, I turned on this rule, and then we now get a whole bunch of phone calls from people not being able to sign in, right? And making sure the communication goes back to the correct team that has the ability to unblock the sign-in, because we keep security related tasks separated from average service technicians, so that there's a second check on those requests. So something that comes in on a service request comes in on one thing, goes to a security team for review before it's implemented. That's a kind of our internal procedure of dealing with secure related events. And that's where this becomes potentially a challenge of that communication of what's the impact to end users, rather than typically, like, I think what we as engineers might be more concerned about is irreversible changes. This doesn't seem to have really that capability of like deleting accounts other than, you know, guest accounts.
Well, no, you could delete any account if you chose that as an action. It does have that capability. So, I mean, to use hyperbole to reinforce the point, if you had an internal malicious actor, they actually could set up a rule with a very low threshold trigger that would delete every single account. That would be possible for them to do.
Chip, what if we approach this a little differently and say, tag the respond alerts with a respond tag. Give us the ability. Okay, great. Give us the ability to export those records specifically, and the ability to import with a reverse. So you don't have to maintain a large data, but give us the ability to search, filter, export, and then say, we fucked up, help us, and reverse this process by uploading it and saying reverse.
So the first three of those conditions you can already do. We do tag them with respond. You can already build those into an exportable CSV that you could then turn around and upload. I mean, like every condition is there, except for us building a reverse mechanism that says, you know, any action taken on this account, roll it back, right?
But if I present the transaction detail or the alert detail to be able to undo that, or say reverse, you know, just apply the reverse logic to it. I'm thinking, hey, we've disabled, you know, 100,000 accounts by mistake, as an example, your largest customer. How can they rapidly respond? Because it's a complete incident response case at that point.
Yeah, I hear you.
Chip, while you're
Okay.
cogitating, Ben, can I ask you to come on? Because you said you use it a lot. Or you said, you know, you are using it. How are you using
Okay.
it? You there, Ben?
Can you hear me?
Gotcha, Ben.
Okay. I just created rule for the MFA check to see if, you know, or we have accounts that had MFA turned off, which is one of the rules that I was hoping for when it first started. I found that, and so I appreciate you guys adding that. That's awesome. So I just enabled that just with a do nothing action. I was just going to follow up with what Andy was saying. You know, I know it probably would be a little bit of an undertaking, but maybe like a menu just says actions, and it displays all the actions that SaaS Alerts has taken. Maybe it has, you know, this account was disabled and stuff, and it has maybe a checkbox you could check and say, okay, revert that action. Maybe a check all the boxes and revert, you know, if it's a mass change. Something similar to the way you guys do with your alerts. Like I said, it would probably be a pretty big thing.
Chip, any comments on that? Or?
I mean, look, they're all reasonable ideas. They're just taking the next set of steps around SaaS Alerts becoming a tool that's actually protecting the MSP from itself, rather than us relying on the MSP to correctly configure. You know, I'll tell you another one that popped into my head since we're talking about this, and I hadn't considered it before. We probably should already have a stopgap built in that when anybody selects the action delete account, we don't let them set it to automatic. Like automatic is grayed out. It's got to be a manual approval.
I would highly recommend that. Anything that's destructive, any automation that's destructive needs to have
that's the only one that's
prompt.
kind of irreversible, right? I mean, even that's not irreversible in the Microsoft environment. At least you got 90 days. Account, you can go back and recover it, but still, it's a heart attack moment, right, when that happens. So I see where everyone's coming from. You guys can probably obviously see the general consternation look on my face or the gears turning, because I'm just thinking about the amount of lift that's involved in coming around this next bend. They're not bad ideas. I can't throw any shade at the ideas. I just have to, we have to think as a team, our whole engineering team, about where we would slot this into the priorities of all the other things that we're working on.
So Chip, I want to go ahead.
So Chip, another idea, if you've already got SMS built into the platform.
Mm-hmm.
So as Ryan was saying, like me, he's the stopgap at his company. What about an SMS response? Hey, we're about to take a delete action on X number of devices to your key person. It's almost like MFA.
That's already there, Gary. That's already built into what Respond does.
Well, I think, isn't the SMS just a notification? I'm talking about a respond. Respond yes or no.
It's a respond yes or no. When manual approval is required, it's approve or reject.
Via the SMS?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't understand that. Okay.
Hey, Jeff, I want to say one, I'm really excited about what you've got going here with Respond to. What you're hearing is shit happens. And
Yeah.
and what I'm hearing, what was just asked is if this thing is set to auto and you get an SMS alert, it will not execute unless you respond yes. That was not, that's how I interpreted what was being asked. And I don't know that that was clear.
Yeah, and if that's what was being asked, then I didn't take it that way. If it's set to auto, it's auto. That's the whole point of fully automatic. If it's set to manual approval, then you're going to get the SMS. So the action is queued up and it's waiting for someone to either approve or reject it at that point.
Okay. Obviously, we all see there's really great potential here, and it will really help streamline a lot of and improve customer experience, plain and simple. It's just, I know everyone makes mistakes, and this protecting us from ourselves, at least to some degree, is essential.
Ben, did you want to say something? You started, I know it was.
Yeah, so I was just looking at the respond module, and if you look under the response action, it says last 7 days of trigger history. So that almost kind of fits what I was talking about. It shows you all the actions, I guess, that it took under that particular rule. And I don't know if it'd be possible if that would, a reverse action would be capable of being put in there.
That's where we'd start. What we have to think about is how we queue those up for instant reversal. It's one thing to log them. There's a whole lot of code to write to take that logging and turn it into, okay, now we're going to reach back out to the API and re-update.
And yeah, another thing would be like, what would stop it from just saying, oh, well, if this condition's still true, I'm going to go ahead and do it again. So.
Well, presumably if somebody, so now you bring up another twist to this. Like, this is how the engineering meeting goes, guys. Now you bring up another twist. Presumably if somebody does want to roll back, you're automatically gonna at least put the rule back into the draft stage. And then maybe we should ask them, do you want to put it back in the draft stage? Like, this is why these things that sound simple to do wind up taking months and months to get complete, because you go through lots of iterations just in the planning side of it. But again,
there's nothing simple about it.
These are that's for sure. These are all they're all very interesting ideas. And look, to the extent that they enhance the strength of Respond, that's certainly in SAS Alert's best interest. We think this is one of the most powerful pieces of our platform. So, we like lots of feedback around it.
Hey, Chip, can I throw something out real quick? I'm sorry to interrupt there on. Does the idea or the premise of putting the capability of unblocking accounts not just complicate exactly what you were talking about, Andy and Gary? If somebody does that by mistake, you just opened up yourself to a world of potential issues. I don't know if that adds so much as it takes away from the security aspect.
I'm believing it works both ways. If someone undoes work that we've done intentionally, and they're doing that as a malicious actor, I need to be able to look at, and that's why I thought some sort of export, which you can do, but be able to say, feed these actions into Respond and execute on it, was perhaps the least expensive time-wise for SAS Alerts to potentially help us cope with this situation.
Yeah, that import part is what makes me nervous. Again, it seems like that's abusable and the opposite of a cybersecurity function. I think that, Chip, we should probably talk about it, but I don't love it.
Yeah, I appreciate Andy's instinct to want to make it easier on us, but I'm not a fan of the import either. Okay. Anytime we're ingesting files that are then parsed and processed, that opens the potential door for abuse. And I wouldn't want to even create a possibility of having that attack vector on us, if that makes sense. So, if we head down this path, we're going to have to do our own managing. Can I ask, Andy, I'm going to ask this at you directly. Does it satisfy what you're thinking to only be able to replay the last event on an account in a given tenant?
I would ask for 24 hours. And that would be because we may not become aware of this issue for a day.
Well, if the issue occurred and the last thing that happened was all the accounts were blocked,
Oh,
it's not a
Um,
matter of time. That's the last
okay.
thing that happened. So
So-
we're going to undo that.
all right. So let me ask you, let's just say we're a year from now and we've got a whole bunch of respond procedures automatically occurring. And the one that's the problem, Teresa, can you get this, please? The one that's the problem is happened 10 passes ago. In other words, we've have this problem and then 3 other actions already occurred because of response effectiveness.
Can I jump
Yeah,
in?
I mean, if you think about that, you're getting super complicated in how you roll back, right? So let's say that we've done 10 things in total, and number 7 in that list, in chronological list, with 1 being the nearest chronology, 10 being the latest. Number 7 you believe is causing a problem. But if you undo that, it can cascade down to everything else that you've done after it. You see what I mean? Like you have
I totally get you. And I don't have an answer for this one other than, hey, we're using Respond because it's automating, it's a cloud automation tool par excellence. And now we've got a guy who made a mistake. Okay. And he's no longer with us because it was disastrous. How do I have an incident response plan to deal with this for my customers? That's really the way to phrase the question.
So I want to throw something out. I mean, as I think this through, and Steve, you posed a great question. I want to come back to you, Steve Jacobs, and welcome to the call. Chip, I'm going to kind of pose this to you. I mean, to me, when I think respond, I want to think about threat modeling. In other words, I don't want to just build SOAR capability to build SOAR capability. I want to build like when X and Y are typically aligned, and we've agreed that this is our policy in our company, that we take action. Again, let's use a simple one. Geolocation in Eastern Bloc, MFA turned off and a mail forwarding rule, right? Even if it's quote unquote wrong in that somebody actually in our company did that and it was legitimate, I think, isn't it come back to threat modeling and what our policy is? And if we turn off 6,200 accounts because of that action, I mean, I would rather turn off 6,200 accounts because the odds are, if that happens, a threat actor's in our environment based on MITRE, right?
Yeah. So remember that Respond Today does everything that you just outlined, Andy. And remember that it's also very granular. So even if we tell a respond rule that we want to apply this rule to every single one of our customer tenants and every single one of their users, it's still evaluating each account individually.
Right.
So it's only going to shut off that one account that has the Eastern Bloc access, MFA turned off, and a forwarding rule created. It's not going to hit all 6,200. Now,
100%.
if all 6,200 had that happen, I think we'd all agree that we are guaranteed that we know we have an entire tenant domain that's been compromised, and we would want it to shut it off.
No, so you're hitting my point exactly. Is that shouldn't and I'd love to bring in, we can do, Jim. I'm just going to pose this to you. We could bring in some, and I'll ask you and ask the community, yes or no. Would you guys like? I could bring in somebody on threat modeling and let's look at what the common scenarios, the most, when you look at MITRE ATT&CK and the organizations that are using variations of X, Y, Z, to me, those are the standards that should be built. And again, to your point, Chip, if 6,200 of those happen, turn them all off. I want Respond to do that. Anyway, just my thoughts. I
agree with you, Andy, but I also agree with what other Andy and Gary and others are saying, that if that happens and it turns out it happened because of a misconfiguration by a tech, they now have, many hours of work to manually unroll that. And, what Andy is saying is, can you make it possible to press an undo button?
No. I get the undo button. I'm just saying, why wouldn't the policies be put in, like, in place on true threat modeling. Like, I wouldn't want somebody to just willy-nilly go, let's configure X, Y, and Z. That's
Yeah.
what I'm.
No, I agree with you, but people do make mistakes, and you have and or logic involved in creating these trigger rules that
Mhm.
can be combined together. And sometimes people can get wrapped around an axle with those logic capabilities between what and or do individually. And then when you start combining them together, you can get some really complex rules here. So it's plausible that somebody makes a mistake and does it. Like I guess, I mean, I'll be honest, we've certainly our first pass through this, our first step in it is us saying to ourselves, look, our partners are pretty smart. They're not going to run themselves down a drain hole with Respond. Andy's saying, okay, but it's not always the smartest people in the room that are tasked with building the rule. So
Just
I'm just telling you from like the onboarding experience, and that we're a relatively newer customer, and we signed up during last year's DataCon, and so getting things into the system is relatively easy. Getting moving with Respond, I've had to kind of hit the brakes quite often internally to say like, hey, you got to really think about the consequences here, right? In the sense of I'm having to have a lot more high level kind of business meetings about the intention of this automation, rather than just if I just assign this to a SOC technician, I would say that would be outside of their purview in being able to come up with the policy or procedure of us as a company to implement these kinds of template rules and the ramifications what those may be because of that automation. And it's the two linchpins, which was what we discussed, is any destructive event, so like deleting, and the turning on automatic respond. So like those are the things that I'm the most concerned about. And the way we mitigate around that right now is that I'm the only one that has access to the darn portal. Everyone else has to. So it's like you've got one thing, and the challenge is so it's like I have to write documentation of what our intent is, get that through approval, and then go in and double check and put those settings in, and then implement them. Right. So it's like I have to kind of do it with kid gloves and take it in stages. So it slows down the implementation process of, say, new rules or the process of Respond.
yeah, so Ryan, you're actually hitting on a theme that, and this is, I guess, what's the best about the SASE call every week, is we can ask some of these questions. So one of the primary assumptions that we made when we started building SaaS alerts in 2018, or conceiving of it, is that there would only be a number of admins that would have this kind of control, or the control to schedule reports out to the customers, because that's a potential data leak possibility. So if we do this sort of laid out mathematically in my head, if I looked at a 10-person MSP, a small MSP, my notion was that there'd only ever be one admin there and a few techs that were able to work directly with SaaS alerts, but not everybody. It wasn't designed to be a piece of software that people stare at all day. And then scale that up sort of logarithmically, and you get to the 200-person SOC company that has 10 admins in it, and everybody else is just a standard team member. So I guess I'm framing a question here, and my question was our assumption incorrect, or has it become less valid now because we've bolted on additional capabilities than we had at the start?
I'll tell you from my perspective, like your assumption was correct. It's just and we run into this challenge often in the sense that the average MSP is smaller, I would say, than the large guys, right? So those are two different kind of categories. And so like we're kind of in that medium threshold where we're small and large at the same time, in the sense that we have a lot of clients and not necessarily a lot of technicians doing security related tasks. We have a lot of different kind of divisions. So the thing that we run into a challenge all the time, and this is a challenge with almost every single MSP tool we use, is that we have an administration team that does the user account creation and the permissions, the day-to-day kind of sysadmin work of the tool itself, not the content inside of it. So when we have say a new hire, and we need to add a user, say a technician, a SOC technician into the portal, we have a dedicated team that goes and provisions those accounts. So, well, in order to do that, they have to be admins. Well, almost always the administrative role allows you to be an administrator of all the things rather than just say user creation versus implementing things that are affecting to clients. Where we try to bifurcate is anything that affects us as a company, they have access. Anything that can affect a client, a different team has access. So that way we have a different role of efficiency where we don't have someone just going in, a high paid resource going in and just creating users all, all the time
Right.
versus creating these new rules or procedures for a client. And we just run into that challenge all the time where the permission levels of roles often are just not specific enough for us to do those use cases of like a billing admin or a user admin versus, content administrator.
It's just least
So
privilege.
since you're a relatively new partner, Ryan, are you aware that we do have that kind of role-based access and you can literally define your own roles and groups and what, at a very
So-
granular level, what people have access to?
What we tried to do so far is in order to create users right now, they have to be an administrator. Right? To add a user into SaaS alerts, you have to be an administrator.
Right.
That same role, I don't want them to be able to disable or implement a template. Right? So that's the challenge. So it's like I need to be able to have someone create accounts, but not be able to do anything else in the portal. Right? And so it's like traditionally, and I could be wrong, when I went through the procedure during onboarding, we weren't able to have that level of granularity. That if you were either a technician or administrator, and those were the things that told you whether you could interact with the client's environment or not, but the admin role is the one that creates the users for the technician piece, right?
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think we need to have the onboarding team circle back with you because that's absolutely more depth and granularity
Okay.
That's available now that you may not even have access to it. I'll have to circle up with leader on that question and see where we stand with RBAC and the rollout.
yeah, please.
I-
If I have
I'd
access
love
to
to
that
improve
either, I
that
would love to.
experience.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
This is,
I was just gonna,
Yeah,
I was
go
gonna say
ahead.
that, I think everybody makes mistakes. I remember one of the first things I did when I started was I created a rule with Automate to roll out Dell Open Manage to any computer that didn't have it. Well, I forgot to add servers that didn't have it. So I spent the next couple of months removing Dell Open Manage from a couple of workstations, about 600 of them. But I think it's like Ryan said, just a matter of just controlling what access somebody has. When we were coming up with our respond rules, 3 of us met, discussed every single possibility, every single trigger, and came up with ones that we thought would work. We set them in, the action do nothing and just to alert on low priority, just so we could watch and see what happens.
That's essentially the stage we're at right now, in the sense that it's like we're using it for monitoring to see how to build
Yeah.
workflows around the information flow in order to
Just
not catch ourselves in a
anything-
situation where it's unintended consequences.
Anything that you can think of, I created a bunch of rules and half of them didn't do what I wanted them to do, but I was safe because there's no action being performed.
Right. Yeah. And so it's like having that that automatic checkbox, even if it just popped up a dialog box, it's like, are you sure you want to do this? just so that you confirm, like, yeah, that was my real intention, is to do this automatically. Like that
Delete
level
the
of
user if they don't have MFA. I'm tired
Right.
of dealing with them.
Yeah.
I love this interaction you two are having. So now you're forcing me to ask a question that I've been wondering for a long time.
Sure.
About the partner community in general. And since you guys are so far down the rabbit hole, has it occurred, either Ben or Ryan, as you guys are doing this experimentation, has it occurred to you that what Respond really does in its final sort of end phase is it allows you to completely customize every single alert in SaaS alerts so that you can drop down all of the standard status accounts that we make that are global of alert status. You can drop everything to low and set up hyper granular, super quiet alerting on every single customer. Has it occurred to you guys that that's
Oh, it's
possible?
definitely occurred to us. I mean, like the thing that it is we get a good level of detail already of not having to do that level of customization. I mean, like that is something that like as our maturity level into the product improves, then that would be something that we would look at, be like, okay, what other things are we able to do with this, right? But you get like the law of diminishing returns, right? So it's like we're
Yep.
trying to do the things that have the big impact, both from a labor and from a cost perspective, and then from a security perspective, right? Because if we can't pull those things off first, then yeah, we've got a great high-minded things of making you more secure, but if we don't have the labor to implement it, then it's just a great idea on paper.
Yeah.
Right? And so
you got to keep the horse in front of the cart.
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
so-
we only have like a handful of rules that are actually completely automated. Most of them are just notifying. Like I see an alert pop up if, say, someone deletes, downloads 30 files off of OneDrive and then deletes, 30 files. And so it just pops us up. Okay, that's definitely some curious stuff going on there. And most of the time it's nothing, but it's good to know about it.
I just wanted to also add, it's really awesome that SaaS Alerts is willing to invest this time in its partner community. And, out of this, that I feel really like we're being heard and that you take action. The only other thought that comes to mind is perhaps giving us ability to share respond templates across the community that have been vetted so that we could make this onboarding and process much more effective and efficient across all your partners. Hey, these are known working. This is that cause. Take Chip's suggestion. Once you get comfortable with this, take all these things to low and then have our alerts trigger for you. And then the question becomes, what happens on a use case when a new alert is established, right? And does it then come up? And we want to make sure that those come in and we deal with them separately. But sharing templates, having the ability, the power that you're giving us is tremendous. This is so much easier to go in and help sell cloud services, and why we're different, because we have this tool that people could only do with devices before, we now do with cloud.
I think that, Andy, and also like just to work on beta almost rules and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. This is how I'm looking at it. Can anybody offer suggestions?
Yeah.
Well, Ben, and Andy, almost like we could do a SASE call where we just technical deep dive into possibilities. Like I said, like I'd love that to be, not only that, but bring in somebody that understands, threat modeling, and we can talk about what the most common, if a threat actor is going to get in, what are the common, top 3 things that would be triggers? What would you, maybe get Bo back from Black Hills and go, okay, you compromise an O365 account. What are you going to do? And then can we build rules around those actions, right? That he's going to take, right? His TTPs that we could then have as templates. You don't have to use them, but we could at least have then a methodology that's truly vetted.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's a really good idea. And Andy, Ben, thanks for the feedback. That's awesome. And,
So Jim, I know
Ryan's new to the call.
I know.
So
I've been lurking since I onboarded. I normally keep my camera off, and just I always find it, it's important to listen and learn before interjecting. So trying to learn what I don't know before I start chiming up and saying, oh, how about this? How about that?
I was pretty excited when you put your camera on. For a second, I thought Aaron Rodgers was a partner.
Hey guys, I've got to jump. I have a 2 o'clock literally in the on deck circle. But Ryan, thanks for chiming in. Ben, as always, Gary, Andy, great call, guys. And we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.